Get ready for a deep dive today into the world of secure messaging. We're going to be talking about two ideas that sound a little intimidating, maybe. The trepidation of relationship and the trepidation of memory. But don't worry, we'll break it all down. We've got some fascinating sources. A book called Secreto die dritte Epoche der Cryptography and a document called Human Proxies.
Yeah, these concepts are really important for understanding the future of privacy, so let's jump right in.
Sounds good. Let's start with this whole trepidation of relationship thing. What does that even mean?
Okay, so think of it like this. Every time you send a message, call someone, even as it appears online, you're leaving a trace of that connection, right?
Okay.
Now imagine someone gathering all that data, not just on you, on everyone. They start to see patterns, like who you talk to, how often, even like where you might be based on who else is in your network.
Right.
That possibility that someone could use your connections to like expose something about you, that's the trepidation of relationship.
Yeah, I can see how that would be unnerving. It's like your friends list all of a sudden isn't just a bunch of names. It's like a map of your life that someone could use against you.
Exactly. And it's not just about who you're connected to. It's about the content of your communications, too.
Oh, right. The actual messages, which brings us to, I guess, trepidation of memory.
You got it. This one's all about the fact that anything you've ever said or shared online, even stuff you've deleted, it might still be out there, like on servers, backups, you name it. Creating this kind of digital memory that can come back to haunt you, even if you thought it was gone.
Wait, so even if I, hit delete, it's not really gone.
Yeah.
That's a little unsettling.
Yeah, it is a valid concern.
Like, people change, opinions evolve.
Yeah.
It seems unfair that something you said years ago could still be held against you.
It is, and this isn't some, far-fetched hypothetical either. The Human Proxies document actually points to Edward Snowden's revelations about those mass surveillance programs like XKeyscore, Prism, and Tempora.
Oh.
These programs collected and analyzed massive amounts of data, about people's communications. It demonstrates just how vulnerable our digital memories can be.
So we've got this trepidation of relationship, the fear that our connections can be used against us, and trepidation of memory, the fear that our past communications could come back to bite us. It seems like those two anxieties are kind of interconnected, right?
Absolutely. They both stem from the same root cause. The fact that our digital lives are constantly being, tracked, recorded, and the consequences can be significant. Imagine being denied a job or a loan because of something you posted online years ago. Or worse, facing legal repercussions for a message you thought was long gone.
Yeah, it's almost like we need a way to create some distance between, ourselves and our digital selves, some way to blur the lines and take back control over what's out there.
That's a great way to put it, and that's exactly what some innovative messaging apps are trying to do.
Okay, tell me about those apps. What kind of solutions are they coming up with?
Well, two apps in particular stand out, Spot-On and Smoke. They've each developed some really ingenious features to address these trepidations.
Okay, so let's start with Spot-On. What are they doing to tackle this trepidation of relationship?
Their answer is something called Human Proxies, and it's actually inspired by a pretty old-school tactic. Think of it like this. Back in the days of physical mail, if you wanted to send a letter without revealing your location, you might ask a friend in a different country to mail it for you.
Right, so you're using a friend as kind of a middleman to hide your true location.
Exactly, and that's essentially what Spot-On has done, but for the digital world. They've created a way for you to choose a friend in your Spot-On network to act as your proxy. When you send a message through this proxy, it looks like it's coming from your friend's device, not yours.
So, my message is taking a detour through my friend's account before reaching the intended recipient.
Yeah, that's right. And here's the really ingenious part. Because Spot-On uses end-to-end encryption, even your friend can't see the content of your message. They're just acting as a relay point, adding an extra layer of separation between you and the recipient.
So even though my message is passing through my friend's account, it's still totally private between me and the person I'm sending it to.
That's the beauty of it. Your message is like a sealed envelope that your friend is simply dropping off at the recipient's doorstep. They never get to open it and read what's inside.
That's a really clever solution. And I bet it makes things really difficult for anyone trying to analyze those relationship patterns we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it does. Imagine someone trying to track your communication patterns. They see messages going back and forth between you and your friend, but they have no way of knowing that your friend is just a proxy and the real recipient is someone else entirely.
It's like throwing a wrench into the gears of that whole surveillance machine.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's a powerful tool for protecting your privacy. And it's just one of the ways Spot-On is addressing the trepidation of relationship.
Now, what about smoke? How are they tackling trepidation of memory?
They've come up with something called Fiasco keys. To understand this, you need to know a little about how messages are normally encrypted. Usually there's a single key that's used to both encrypt and decrypt a message, but Smoke does things differently. They generate multiple temporary keys for each message, and only one of them is actually valid.
So it's like giving the recipient a big jumbled up keyring with only one working key.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And the reason they call them Fiasco keys is because it creates a real mess for anyone trying to, snoop on your past communications. Even if someone managed to hack into your device or access stored data, they'd be faced with a ton of keys. Figuring out which one unlocks the message would be incredibly difficult.
Wow, so Spot-On is all about hiding your connections with human proxies. And Smoke is all about scrambling your past messages with these Fiasco keys. It sounds like both apps are offering a good dose of, what do we call it, plausible deniability?
You got it. Plausible deniability is the ability to deny sending a message or knowing certain information, even if you are actually involved. And both human proxies and Fiasco keys make it much harder to definitively prove what you did or didn't do online.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense. It seems like these apps are giving people tools to take back some control over their digital lives, to push back against this feeling of constant surveillance and judgment.
Yeah, that's right. They're empowering users to be more mindful of their digital footprints and to protect their privacy in a world that's, increasingly obsessed with collecting and analyzing our every move. But there's a lot more to uncover here.
Well, I'm definitely intrigued. What else is there?
Well, remember that book, Super Secreto, we mentioned earlier?
The one about the third epoch of cryptography? Yeah, what about it?
It turns out both Spot-On and Smoke have some even deeper tricks up their sleeves, involving some seriously cutting-edge technology that even goes beyond human proxies and Fiasco keys.
Whoa, okay, you've got me on the edge of my seat now. I can't wait to hear more.
Welcome back.
So before the break, we were talking about human proxies and Fiasco keys, those really clever features in Spot-On and Smoke. But I'm still a little fuzzy on how those things actually work. Can we unpack that a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a closer look at human proxies first. Imagine you and your friend, let's call her Sarah, are both using Spot-On. You want to send a message to someone, but you don't want your connection to them to be obvious, so you ask Sarah to be your proxy.
Okay, so I go into Spot-On and I tell it to send my message through Sarah's account.
It's even more seamless than that. You don't actually have to tell Spot-On anything. The app is designed with privacy in mind from the ground up. When you choose to send a message using a human proxy, Spot-On automatically routes your message through Sarah's device.
Okay, so on the recipient's end, it looks like the message is coming from Sarah.
Exactly. And here's the really ingenious part. Because Spot-On uses end-to-end encryption, even Sarah can't see the content of your message. She's just acting as a relay point, adding an extra layer of separation between you and the recipient.
So even though my message is passing through Sarah's account, it's still totally private? Like between me and the person I'm sending it to?
That's the beauty of it. Your message is like a sealed envelope that Sarah is simply dropping off at the recipient's doorstep. She never gets to open it and read what's inside.
Okay, that's pretty brilliant, and I bet it makes things really hard for anyone trying to analyze those relationship patterns we were talking about.
It does. Imagine someone trying to, track your communication patterns. They see messages going back and forth between you and Sarah, but they have no way of knowing that Sarah is just a proxy and that the real recipient is someone else entirely.
It's like throwing a wrench into the gears of that whole surveillance machine. I love it.
It's a powerful tool for protecting your privacy, and it's just one of the ways that Spot-On is addressing the trepidation of relationship.
Now, what about Smoke's Fiasco keys? How does that actually work?
Think of a traditional encryption key, like the key to your front door. It's one key, and it unlocks one door. Fiasco keys are like having a giant keychain full of keys, and only one of them actually opens the door.
Okay, I get the analogy, but how does that work with digital messages?
When you send a message using Smoke, the app generates a bunch of these temporary keys. It includes all of those keys along with the encrypted message.
So the message and this, pile of keys all get sent to the recipient.
Yep. Now, because the message is encrypted, the recipient needs a key to decrypt it, right?
Right.
But instead of just sending that one correct key, Smoke sends a whole jumble of keys, and only one of them will actually work. The recipient's Smoke app will automatically try each key until it finds the one that decrypts the message.
So it's like a guessing game, but the app is doing the guessing for you.
Exactly. And from an outside perspective, it's impossible to know which key is the correct one.
Okay, I'm starting to see why they call it a fiasco. It would be a real headache for anyone trying to, snoop on those messages. They'd have to sift through a ton of useless keys just to find the one that unlocks the message.
It's a brilliant way to make those digital memories much harder to reconstruct. And even if someone did manage to, decrypt a message, they wouldn't be able to prove who sent it, or even if it was successfully received, because they'd have no way of knowing which key was used.
That plausible deniability is a game changer, really. It's not just about making messages harder to read. It's about giving people more control over their digital narrative. It's about creating a world where our past communications can't be easily twisted or misconstrued.
You've hit the nail on the head. These trepidations, the anxieties about our digital relationships and memories, those are real concerns in today's world. And it's encouraging to see developers like the ones behind Spot-On and Smoke coming up with these innovative ways to address them.
I'm curious, though, are there any downsides to using these features? I mean, with human proxies, wouldn't you have to trust your friend completely? They could potentially see who you're talking to, even if they can't read the messages?
That's a valid point. Trust is definitely a factor with human proxies. You need to be sure that your friend, understands how the feature works and that there's someone that you can rely on to protect your privacy.
And what about Fiasco keys?
No.
If the app is generating all these extra keys, wouldn't that make things slower?
There could be a slight performance impact, yeah. But the developers of Smoke have worked hard to optimize the process, and, in most cases, users won't even notice a difference.
Okay, so it seems like any potential drawbacks are far outweighed by the benefits in terms of privacy and security.
I think so. It's all about weighing those risks and benefits. But the fact that these features even exist is a huge step forward. It shows that developers are taking these concerns seriously, and they're actively looking for ways to empower users.
It's like they're building these digital fortresses. But instead of keeping people out, they're designed to protect what's inside. Our privacy, our freedom, our right to control our own digital lives.
I love that analogy. It's about reclaiming our digital spaces and making them truly ours. But the story doesn't end there. There's a whole other layer to this that we haven't even touched on yet.
Oh, now you've got me really intrigued. What else is there?
Well, remember that book, Super Secreto, we mentioned earlier?
The one about the third epoch of cryptography? Yeah, what about it?
It turns out both Spot-On and Smoke have some even deeper tricks up their sleeves, involving some seriously cutting-edge technology that goes even beyond human proxies and Fiasco keys.
Wow, okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. I can't wait to hear more. So what are these deeper tricks? What's Super Secreto saying about Spot-On and Smoke?
Well, it turns out these apps, they're not just focused on protecting individual messages.
Okay.
They're thinking bigger about how to safeguard entire communication networks.
Wow. Okay, that sounds ambitious. How do you even begin to protect a whole network?
By using something called the Echo protocol. The Super Secreto book actually calls this protocol the heart of Spot-On. It's a revolutionary way to approach secure communication.
So like some kind of superpowered encryption.
It's more about how messages are distributed. Imagine a network, kind of like a web of friends, all using Spot-On.
Okay.
With the Echo protocol, every single message gets sent to everyone in that network.
Wait, hold on. Everyone gets every message? Wouldn't that just create chaos?
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But that's where the genius of the Echo protocol comes in. Each message is put into a special container. Think of it like a digital envelope. And this envelope, it has no information about the sender or recipient on it.
So it's like a secret message in a bottle just floating around the network.
That's a great way to picture it. Now, when someone receives this message in a bottle, their Spot-On app tries to open it using all the keys they have.
So it's like a lock-picking competition.
Exactly. And only the person with the right key can actually read the message. Everyone else just sees a locked container.
That's really clever. It sounds like it would make tracing messages back to the sender practically impossible.
That's the point. It disrupts that whole analysis of relationship patterns we've been talking about because from an outsider's perspective, the messages are just bouncing around randomly between users.
So it's adding another layer of plausible deniability. not just for individual messages, but for the entire network.
Precisely. It makes the whole system more resilient, harder to track, and ultimately more secure for everyone.
This is blowing my mind. It's like the developers of Spot-On looked at the entire concept of secure messaging and just flipped it on its head.
They really did. And Super Secreto suggests that Spot-On is constantly innovating, like building on these core concepts to create even more layers of protection. They even have a feature called cryptographic calling.
Cryptographic calling. Okay, what's that?
It's a way for people to connect directly without ever having to exchange encryption keys over the internet.
Wait, how's that even possible? I thought you needed to share keys for, encryption to work.
You do, but with cryptographic calling, the keys are generated locally on each user's device, based on a shared secret.
So it's like having a secret password that you and a friend both know, and that password is used to create the keys.
That's a good way to think about it. The Super Secreto book explains how Spot-On uses different methods for cryptographic calling. One interesting one is two-way calling.
Two-way calling.
In two-way calling, each person contributes part of that shared secret. It's like splitting a key in half. Each person has their half, and they never have to share the full key online. They just combine their halves to create the same encryption key.
So it completely eliminates the risk of someone, like, intercepting the key during transmission.
Yeah.
So with all these layers, human proxies, the echo protocol, and cryptographic calling Spot-On is like this, super secure communication fortress.
That's one way to put it. But remember, smoke is in the game too.
Right.
And Super Secreto points out something really fascinating about their approach. They're not just focused on making messages hard to read today. They're thinking about the future, about threats that might not even exist yet.
Okay, now you've got me really intrigued. What kind of future threats are we talking about?
Quantum computers.
Whoa, hold on. Quantum computers, those things that are supposed to be exponentially more powerful than regular computers.
The very same. And the problem is they could potentially break the encryption methods that are, widely used today.
So all these secure messages we've been talking about, they could suddenly become vulnerable.
That's the worry, yeah. But Smoke is already ahead of the curve. They're using a special type of encryption called the McKee-Lees algorithm, which is believed to be resistant to attacks from quantum computers.
So they're future-proofing their security. That's impressive.
It is. And Super Secreto actually calls Smoke a pioneer for being the first mobile messenger to implement the McKee-Lees algorithm.
This is all so fascinating. We've gone from worrying about who can see our messages and who's analyzing our connections to thinking about quantum computers and the future of encryption.
It's quite a journey, right? And it highlights the fact that privacy and security in the digital age, they're constantly evolving. The threats are changing, the technology's changing, but the fundamental human need for secure communication, that remains the same.
It's like an ongoing arms race. The developers of these apps constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible to stay one step ahead of, those who want to compromise our privacy.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be aware of these issues, to understand the tools that are available to protect ourselves, and to support the developers who are fighting for a more secure and private digital world.
Well, this deep dive has been truly eye-opening. I feel like I've learned a ton about the challenges we face in protecting our privacy online, and the incredible ingenuity of the people who are working to overcome those challenges.
Me too. It's been a fascinating exploration, and I hope our listeners, feel empowered to take control of their own digital lives and to demand a future where privacy and security aren't just an afterthought, but a fundamental right.
Perfectly said. And on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of secure messaging. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay secure.